Greetings, it's Karen, and I have a presentation today for the young women and for mothers who are parenting little baby girls and for people that would like to become pregnant and are hoping to have a little baby girl, have nephews, nieces. It kind of applies to everyone, but in my long journey as a medicine woman, I've come across some very interesting consistencies that are happening today. And because I was born in the early 1960s, I've seen the progression of how a lot of these things happen. So let's get started. We see young women today that are really suffering. They're off balance. They're struggling in their relationships with their boyfriends, their partners, struggling to find peace with their parents, do well in the schools, and they're also in the doctor's office seeking help for PCOS, and kind of behind the scenes, there's a lot of self-medicating, a lot of drug use. So while I don't consider cannabis to be a drug, I consider it to be a medicine. If you need to use it constantly, it's more of the situation that you're self-medicating. Cannabis is beautiful, it's self-exploratory for the inner landscape of yourself, and it's definitely a medicine. And I first used it in 1975. However, anything that is overused or abused no longer really becomes a medicine, it becomes a habit or an addiction. And so, let's get started. I'm going to make this brief. Most of the women today are unaware of the fact that you need to have your womb cleaned up before you conceive. The education's just not out there. They don't know. They don't even know what that means. And I know that some of you do. And I will have more information on cleaning your womb, keeping your womb in good shape before you conceive. I did that 1993 before I had my son in 1995. And it produces a better result for you and your child who has a higher level of intelligence and a higher immune system and a higher level of vibration, or what you call health. So if mama has issues with her womb, has a lot of heavy metals, maybe has a lot of fillings in her mouth that are leaching out when she chews, these are going to affect baby. Now, most of the time, women want to have an epidural. They want a hospital birth because we've all been told that something could happen. We want to have the doctor there. Whether that's true or not, hospital births come with certain things attached to them, like the PK heel stick and the eye drops and cutting the umbilical cord too soon. And we are certainly progressing into using more alternative, original ways: lotus birth, home unassisted birth, allowing ourselves to birth the placenta and allowing those stem cells to be given to baby, allowing that medicine of the placenta to be taken over to the tree and to bloom for future generations. Okay? But then what happens? We go home, baby gets put into chlorine and fluoride city water for bathing, and you want to keep the baby super clean. And the baby's basically during this time needing to colonize bacteria in the gut, microbiome we call it now, the new fancy words. Everything needs to be Latinized and some Harry Potter type name for everything. And the difference between a medicine woman and a doctor is that we keep things simple, even though we might have quite an extensive vocabulary. Okay? Baby goes home, water with chemicals, heavy metals, chlorine, fluoride, those are halogens. They affect the glandular system. Baby's going to get a huge dose of immunizations by most standards because we want to do what's right and protect baby. Oftentimes women may breastfeed for a little while, they might not. Or maybe they cannot, which was the case for me soon after. Thyroid issues, glandular issues, inability to breastfeed. So we look for something else, or we look for something convenient, or we honestly believed that baby formula was superior. baby formula has a lot of corn syrup solids, a lot of artificial ingredients, and it goes right to work doing exactly what it's designed to do. Thank you, Nestle. It goes right in and it starts gumming up the adenoids, so that's why we have all the tonsil removals, the adenoid issues, the sinus infections, and the ear tubes. It's not the germ factory of all the toddlers getting together. It was the mucus congestion that began with the initiation of all of the processed chemicals on the little baby's fresh digestive system. More vaccines go in, more formula. Now little tiny babies are, and toddlers and little children are being entitled because we just think they're so cute and they're fresh from the Rainbow Bridge. And we just give them lots and lots, shower them with attention, or not for some, unfortunately. And we like that. They're our little babies, and they're so cute, and they're precious, and they're not tainted like a lot of adults. So they're little sponges, soaking things up, including a lot of programming that they don't have the ability to filter out from 0 to 3 that gets itself deposited in the unconscious mind. And if you take a chance and buy my Mind-Body course, you're going to learn about what those programs that are inserted before you even were aware that you could reject them are doing. So we got the formula, the entitlement, and now what? Lots of screen time using laptops, tablets, gaming systems. Back in the day it was Game Boys, Xboxes, PlayStations, tons and tons of screen time, also inserting in programs. Also, our little boys are getting what? A lot of dominator model, a lot of reinforcement of patriarchy, and our women, because we wanted to start this about the females, are getting lots and lots and lots of stereotyping in both ears, stereotyping, that they will become the good caretaker. And that's why in the morning we do about 10 or 15 chores compared to most of you guys. Not all of you, but we're ended up exhausted by the end of the day because we carry the lion's share of the load. Okay, so females get that on them too, that they'll be the caretaker, they'll change the towels, they'll do the sweeping, they'll get the grocery shopping, and they're watching mom do it most of the time. Sometimes you guys are doing it, to be fair, okay? Food. Now what happens? You're sucking on a tube of Go-Gurt, right? You're having dairy cups of yogurt because you want to get your probiotics. Lots of cow milk because you need to have that calcium, and lots of protein, so lots of meat, and now the microbiome is all gummed up, right? Okay, then we want to make sure that we're keeping up with the Joneses, so it's early 3s or early 4s or off to kindergarten, and the young child is needing the home and the hearth at that time to connect with how to take care of itself and how to take care of the beings and the elders and grow food, but we're farming them off into institutions because, well, that's what we do. And, well, they're ready. Is a 3-year-old able to make an intelligent decision that they're ready to go off into stranger care with a large group of people that may have very different values and thinking systems? There's a beauty to that, but there's also a consequence, and we don't know those consequences when we're young parents. We learn it from the elders who say, that might not be such a good idea. Okay? We've got school, we've got sinus issues, because if you're going off into the 3s or the 4s and grandma comes over and grandma catches a cold, all of a sudden it's, I caught it, because those kids are just little germ factories. No, they're not, Grandma. You got it because you're full of mucus and the bacteria gave you a cleansing opportunity. All right. So now we're drinking cow milk, we're eating lots of meat, we're eating lots of wheat, we're vaccinated up, we were baby formula. We're going to go to the doctor when we have a problem and have overkill treatments, okay? We're going to listen. We're going to limit our exercise because now we spend, if you're in a city, more and more time inside the minivan, buckled up with the screen in front of you watching the movie. Again, keeping up with the Joneses, programming, and especially a lot of Disney programming. We're going to switch on over to now anxiety. For mom to keep up with this enormous workload, because she's going to do more most of the time than dad does, she's going to get up and do 15 things by the time dad got up and sat on the toilet. She's already changed the hand towel, swept the floor, put away the dishes, let the dogs out, and on and on and on, before she gets the kids up and then gets herself ready to go to her job all day long and stops at the grocery store on the way home and then eats quickly and runs the kids out to the sports. So the little girl inside of that family goes, that's absolutely exhausting. I can't keep up with that. Or mom's in victim mode because mom herself had issues growing up and she has a lot of sadness and grief coming out and she can't keep up with doing everything, so dad's carrying the lion's share of the work. Our families are off balance because the way of life in the world has been displaced. Indigenous ways have been displaced. Our healing, our educating, our thinking, our word sound. And so the natural consequence of that is anxiety and depression. The natural consequence of that is humiliation. The natural consequence of that is glandular disruptions. The consequence of eating factory farmed milk, meat, and eggs is hormonal distortion, disequilibrium. Okay? We're off balance, simply stated. So now, mom takes 13, 14-year-old to the doctor because she's got a host of symptoms from hyperhidrosis to anxiety to the girls are nitpicking in the school. The girls under 18, 13, 14, they're backbiting at each other because what? We're no different than a pack of dogs. We're resource-oriented. Humans are just as resource-oriented as dogs are. All you got to do is listen to Caesar, which is exactly the same way I grew up. We know that if you put a dog on a leash and you attach it to a human, the dog's going to be vibesing the human's energy. So they may or may not accept other dogs coming up to them based on the connection between the leash and the human. So when your little girl, 13, 14-year-old, young teenager now, tweenagers, go to school and they have better clothes, nice makeup, talking about all their vacations, and they're somewhere where maybe someone else has got a lot of anger and angst and strife in their home, backbiting is the natural result of that. Fear, sadness, grief, humiliation, resentment. Because we don't truly live in an egalitarian society. We live in a caste system, a hierarchy. Some have things and vacations, some do not. And what you need to experience would be being on the, quote, high horse of privilege and power, and then being on the low horse of scrounging to make your food last and your toilet paper and your cleaners and struggling to communicate with people because either you're too intelligent or you don't have the vocabulary and you don't have the power at all that is wielded by the word, which is similar to the sword. The word and the sword are the same thing. So word sound is incredibly important. We're not equipping your girls, your teenagers, your young women with understanding word sound and their power and rituals and how to eat to take care of themselves because you didn't know it yourself. And if you're a teenage girl watching this right now, maybe you'll get this information so you won't keep repeating this insane cycle. So now you go to the doctor because you can't sleep and you get sleeping pills, which is the gateway. The doctor just facilitated the gateway for you into the drug system. So now you're probably, not for sure, but a lot of people are going to find their way into self-medicating from substances on the street. You might be buying someone's Lortabs. You might be hitting someone up from some bars. You might be hitting that alcohol bottle. You're going to do something to assuage your pain, to get rid of your pain. Because anxiety is pain coming up. Depression is pain coming up. So what you're going to do, hit the tattoo parlor so you can go in and needle and ink yourself up. Because it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong, I'm inked up here too. Okay? But you need to feel real. You need something that you can feel. So we don't need to scratch our heads and wonder why there's so much self-mutilation, because you want to feel like life is real because it feels unreal to you. You don't want to feel like other because you're thinking and you want to think yourself outside of the trap of the matrix. But when you go get those sleeping pills, you're getting yourself caught up in the trap because it feels too good to the brain to shut itself off for a while. So next thing you know, you're 15 and 16 and you've got horrible PMS. You're biting everyone's head off, backbiting even more. You feel like crap. You've got huge clots coming out. You feel horrible. You're gaining a lot of excess weight and you notice a lot of facial hair. Well, next thing you know, you go to the doctor and they say, oh, yep, that's PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I've got a free YouTube. You can watch all about that and educate yourself so that you can get some education aside from the heducation that's over at the doctor's office. If you're a doctor, I'm not bashing on you. It's just we have two different systems that actually could be quite complementary if put together properly. You weren't trained in that, and I wasn't trained in the Harry Potter terminology of disease codes. I don't know all those names for all the anatomy and physiology and all the disease codes. But together, our skills mesh quite well for the benefit of all, okay? So now anxiety, you got the boyfriend. Boyfriends aren't ready to settle down, and you've been brainwashed on the whole what? The pyramid scheme of marriage. In case you haven't noticed, and I did family law for almost 18 years as a senior family law paralegal in a variety of capacities, over 50% of marriages are in dissolution. They dissolve. They're divorced, okay? Why? Because we continue to grow, and because marriage was set up as ownership of a female. So you as a female are squirming and you're knowing something just doesn't feel right in this system. And you're right, because it's top heavy on patriarchy, which is a big word for male domination. The power is afforded to the male, just like we started. You're not doing 15 things in the morning by the time he just takes a toilet and comes out and does a couple things and relaxes and takes his time. You're doing a million things. You're keeping it all together because that's the expectation of females. Okay? So keeping right along here. I have a couple of things I want to make sure that I cover. Okay? Mom and dad having disagreements in the home, which that's the nature of people. But some people have quite a bit more because of the illusion, the disillusionment that we're living under, right? The keeping up with the Joneses. You got to have the nicer car. You got to have the new fence. You got to pay all the utility bills. You got to pay the property tax. And if all that money, that energy isn't flowing in, that money that is necessary here in this construct, Babylon, then things start to get kind of strifed because let's face it, just like the dog, we start to see each other as a resource. And after a while, you might be just another person who's eating and pooping in the household, but you're not contributing, you're oppositional, you don't feel good, and so now what? You're going to go out and find the boyfriend and say, F me, I want sex, hit it hard, get me good. And you're out there basically pimping yourself out because you want more pain because that's what you became familiar with. Okay? Stop injuring yourself. Just for a moment, sit down, go to a yoga class, buy a yoga DVD, download some free yoga information. Breathe all the way down to your belly. Just do it right now. You see the whole spiral? It's a downward spiral. And the spiral that I'm bringing is an ascending spiral as opposed to a descending spiral. The descending spiral leads to entropy, and the ascending spiral leads to awakening, enlightenment, feeling good, self-actualization, connecting your avatar with your true self. In yoga, your Sat Nam. So when we chant Sat Nam, we're seeking our true identity. Find your true identity. Don't just make it up and get your makeup on point. so that you've got all the shading, all the foundation, all the powders, all the concealers, so that you look like the expected version of yourself, so you can go out and steal energy because you made yourself up to look like a baby doll or an entertainer on the stage. Be you. Be you till full. Beautiful. Okay? Now, one or two things happen when a young female leaves the home. Either she begins to self-sabotage based on many of the programs that she saw, or she goes out and becomes the overachiever in the family because she wants to be as normal as possible. So she either marries up with someone who's going to make a ton of money, she goes out and just goes headlong into education in a field that's going to make a lot of money, so she's secure and her family is normal. Or she's going to go out and tattoo and pierce and self-destroy and invite guys to come in and just, hit it hard because there's a mother wound. How do I know that? Because I have a mother wound. A big one. And I worked on it for a long time. And I got to work on the mother wound with my own child. Because if we're not careful, these things repeat. And as much as we want them not to, they repeat. Okay? The doctor might not be able to help you if the path you were on was full of toxins and chemicals, programs that were inserted that you don't even know were in there yet, but a good mind-body expert, which I have developed, can sit down and work with you one-on-one, and through how your words sound, how you talk, how you communicate, I note certain things, and then I'm able to say, looks like we're going to unravel this one, and then this one, and then let's redirect and replace this one. And it's a journey. It's not going to the doctor's office and taking the blue pill, the anti-life, the anti-bios. It's not taking the metformin for diabetics so that you can quiet the symptoms of your ovaries screaming that they need detoxification, that they need help, that the seeds of life are not able to cope with what is happening in the world. Females, you don't need to be feminists. You don't need to be haters. You don't need to keep wounding yourself to feel real. Get yourself a copy of The Velveteen Rabbit. I'm serious. Someone gave it to me in my early 30s, and it really helped me. Schedule a session to work with me if you want to. It's what I'm absolutely passionate about. Find a counselor that you trust or a coach in your area. But try, do, love yourself. Shift that energy of self-destruction and mutilation and substance. And learn. Watch my YouTube videos. I talk about thyroid, food, mind-body, dogs, nature, intuitive abilities, intelligence. I'll take you out of that descending spiral of entropy and death and into resurrecting the self. That's what the resurrection is all about, is to resurrect yourself and connect back with nature. I'm sending you all love.